Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
As usual, technical glitches, but one of these days we'll have an absolutely perfect, from beginning to end, for people here and people at home, but we're still working on it. I'm Carl Russ. I'm the president of the board for this congregation, and whenever we have a board meeting, we decided it'd be a good Sunday for me to come and talk to you all about some of the things that we talked about at the board meeting. And I also want you to know that the board minutes are available on the website. So if you want to dig into some more of the details, you're welcome to do that. And of course, you're welcome to attend. So we talked about a lot of things at the board meeting. We've been very busy. We did meet with a member or a representative from the UUA, Christine Purcell, who's in the transitions office, to talk a little bit more about minister, what are our options. And she's very much recommending that we look at contract ministry for a year. Contract ministry is very flexible. We can decide what we want from a minister and see who's available. And the other thing about a contract minister is, if we find somebody we absolutely love, there's nothing to prevent us from calling that person. Where if we do an interim minister, that person you cannot, you have to wait for a time period after they're done. So we may still decide to do an interim at some point, or we may decide to do a settled minister at some point. But, so we're looking at the process of, what does that mean to have a contract minister? We had an update on the parking lot. The electrical work has already begun. Some of the tree trimming has begun. You probably noticed that. Looking at June 1st, I believe, that Rice Riley will actually be here with the heavy equipment.
That's what they say right now.
Yeah, we don't know. But we're progressing. One of the challenges is going to be, once we start working over there, where are we going to park? So we've talked about some different ideas, but maybe you want to start thinking about that. We can park at Woodlawn. I happen to know some people over there. There are other places we can park and maybe shuttle people in. We talked about some different possibilities there. Small group results have been sent out. There was a link in the Monday Focus, last Monday, I believe. And it's a lot to look at, 39 pages. So there's a lot there, a lot of information. And we decided, instead of trying to filter it and edit it, there's what, not necessarily everything people said, but the notes that were taken at the meetings. So those are available, and we're continuing to look at those and try to decide, what does this mean for us going forward. We're looking at trying to update and upgrade our web presence and some other technology things. Annual report went out late because we kept having to make little adjustments to it, but it is out. Do we have hard copies available today? No? Okay, we probably should do that. And I think that's about it for the board meeting. We had some other little things, talked about some memorials and some other things, but the board is always open to talk to you if you have questions. Have anything that I said or didn't say and you're thinking, what? Just grab one of us and we're happy to talk to you about it. Fellowship Life.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There we go. My name is Judy Darnell, and I am a member of this congregation. So please join us after the service today for our first post-pandemic potluck. I knew I was going to mix that one up. In the gathering place. If this is a surprise to you, please join us, since there's always plenty of food. Then at noon, we will hold our annual congregational meeting, as Carl was saying. If you're planning to attend, the ad hoc kitchen committee would appreciate your help in gathering food and dishes. Don't forget our media sale is going on in the gathering place. We have many, many books to choose from, as well as CDs and some DVDs. The sale will run through next Sunday, the 23rd. And remember that our open house is from 4 to 7 on Saturday. Contact Chuck Bauer, Joan Claiborne, or Pam Wycliffe to let them know if you're planning to attend. Since the preparation of food is involved, please let them know very soon. UU Feasters will meet at 11:30 on Wednesday, May 25th at Tradewinds, 921 West McKinley in Mishawaka. RSVP to Mary Adams by Monday, May 23rd, so that she can reserve enough tables. If you are in need of extra support, the Care Committee is here to help you in any way they can. Contact a member, either Mary Adams, Steve Cripe, Karen Cripe, Mary Perrin, Dwight Fish, or Peg Cook, or call the church office and leave a brief message and a committee member will get back to you. Chalice Sparks, a UU camp for all ages, will be held at Camp Friedenwald near Cassopolis from July 8th through 10th. Regular camp activities will take place as well as UU worship. You may stay in their lodge or take advantage of their tent and RV camping spaces. More information, just one pamphlet is left on Ivy Island. Then the fellowship focus deadline is coming up, so if you have information to share with members and friends, contact me by phone or email by Tuesday the 25th. My phone and email information are in the directory. Last week's offering brought $69 to share with the Elkhart County Jail Chaplaincy Fund. This week's collection will be shared with the Boys and Girls Club of Goshen, and collection bowls are not on Ivy Island. Thank you very much, and enjoy the service.
We ring the gong 3 times. Once for those who came before us and made a place for us. Once for those who are here now. And once for those who will come behind and build on the dream. I light the chalice this morning to address our brokenness. May the light of this candle give us the strength and courage, the compassion and the will to help heal our broken brothers and sisters, acknowledging our part in that brokenness, which also makes us broken. For healing of this brokenness, may we call on the wisdom of the universe for guidance and direction. We also light a candle each week in solidarity and remembrance of our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. In your order of service, there's the unison covenant. Would you recite that with me now, please? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. The offering today is going to go to the Boys and Girls Club, who share their offering with the Boys and Girls Club of Goshen. And we're going to enjoy John Legend during the offering. As I pass the plate from the center, as it gets to the end, pass it to the row behind you, and then I'll pick it up in the center. I'm going to introduce Marva at this time, since she wasn't here at the beginning, but she got here pretty close to the front. Pre-COVID, she accompanied us sometime, I don't remember the date, but now that we're back together, hopefully, for the for the duration. She will be joining us from time to time. Thank you, Marva, for joining us this morning. If you would turn to hymn number 154, we're going to try this a cappella. Obviously, the slaves or whatever the setting was on all of these spirituals, they didn't have pianos and guitars. They didn't have that luxury. They were out in the cotton fields. Who knows what the setting was? So Marva's going to play this for us through once, and then I'll lead us through each verse. And let's just sing it by a cappella, and we'll see how it goes. Very slow and deliberate. When I was 15, I was a sophomore, and Pop Gowdy had this song to try out for the choir. I think the guys just did it. He changed the key so we could get in that range, but I didn't really realize the significance of this song then. But as I've gotten older, it's grown on me. Wayfaring stranger. I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger, traveling through this world of woe. But there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my Father. I'm going there no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I know dark clouds will gather round me. I know my way is rough and steep, but but beauteous fields lie just before me, where God's redeemed their vigils keep. I'm going there to see my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'm going there to see my father. I'm going there no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'm only going over home. Before I say anything, if I'm to be totally honest with you, I must admit that I am extremely ignorant and totally clueless as to what it is really like to live the life of a black man. I read one book many years ago. Many of you might have read it, Black Like Me, John Howard Griffin. He changed the pigment of his skin for one night to see what it was like, and he wrote a book about it. The message I will be sharing with you this morning is my story. It may be no different from yours in many ways. The hope in sharing my story is that all of you will glean, if only but a small sparkle, some understanding of what I have experienced and continue to experience today. Born in 1944, I was too young to really comprehend the significance and the turbulent developments of the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. This, of course, referring to the relationships of black folk and white folk. My family lived in Florida for a couple of years for my father's health, and I remember at the tender age of 7 being yanked backward around my neck from a drinking fountain in St. Petersburg, Florida. I had unknowingly been drinking out of the colored fountain instead of the white fountain. That was taboo for anyone, even a small child. But what I remember more profoundly is an anger I felt at such a young age about this unexplainable reality I just experienced. I obviously didn't realize the significance of the labels on those public drinking fountains, but I felt wronged in some way. That was my first realization of what you might call my whiteness, my being born white and privileged, than had I been born colored. As I reflect on that incident now as an adult, I believe I had an innate sense that something was wrong about that whole situation. I have always been grateful for that sensitivity. It's something no one could really teach me. We moved back to Indiana by the time I was 8, but that small but significant incident marked the beginning of my development in the midst of a terrible social wrong that has been institutionalized in the United States since the time of slavery. I was too young to participate in the March in Selma in 1965, but the journalistic images that that event produced enlightened me and made me much more cognizant to this ugliness that existed. My awareness of black folks' reality was strengthened by several blessed incidents I experienced throughout my life. Visiting a black church in Baltimore, Maryland at 19 years of age, I was asked to give a testimony during that service. something I had never experienced in a white church. That had a huge influence on my faith journey at the time. I met Mr. Big, Mr. Lindsay, big guy, but a teddy bear. In 1965. He was an orderly at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. That relationship generated many great conversations about race relations and war and peace. Staying in a black family's home in Baltimore, Maryland when my children were young produced long, good memories. Meeting some very wonderful African Americans during my working career at both Utilimaster and Deere Specialties, those relationships extended from the Mississippi River to Florida to the East Coast, developed over 35 years on the road in sales. I read several books and became more aware of black history in the United States. I certainly wasn't taught that in public schools. From a current friendship developed with Don Wycliffe of this fellowship, I learned from his book, Black Domers, that there were actually 2 black players in the 1951-52 basketball season on the Notre Dame starting lineup. And I realized when I read that it took 17 more years after that, until 1968 at Vanderbilt University, that Perry Wallace played basketball, marking the integration for the first time in the Southeastern Conference. I really don't care for rap music, but my soul stirs when I hear a black church choir singing a Negro spiritual. And as a side, kudos for us white folk attempting these songs in our own choirs and hymnals, but we don't even come close. Anyway, I wanted to share some of my personal story to help set the stage and context for the real substance of this message. In his book, The Souls of Black Folks, and I'd recommend this to anybody, by W.E.B. Du Bois, chapter 11 is titled, Of the Passing of the Firstborn. When I read this chapter, I was stopped in my tracks and had to take several breaths to digest what I had just read. To share the content of that chapter, and for a more personal context for you, the listener, to hearing my words, I want you to stop what you're thinking, if that's possible, and simply take a moment and remember back to when your first child or grandchild was born. If you didn't have children of your own, think of someone's birth that you experienced who is very close to you now. How did you feel looking at that little pink, sometimes ugly, wrinkly skin, and sometimes beautiful, wrinkly skin, but always precious? What was your level of excitement and anticipation for this future life gifted to you in birth? Here now is the reality of too many of our brothers and sisters living in our midst. I will refer to the paragraphs I'm reading from the book, and then when I'm done with that, I will say end quote to add my personal thoughts, but that way you'll know if I'm in the book or I'm just talking to myself. Quote, why had not the brown of his eyes crushed out and killed the blue? For brown were his father's eyes and his father's father's. And thus in the land of the color line I saw, as it fell across my baby, the shadow of the veil. Within the veil he was born, said I, and there within shall he live, a Negro and a Negro's son. holding in that little head, bitterly, the unbowed pride of a hunted race, clinging with that tiny dimpled hand, wearily, to a hope not hopeless, but unhopeful, and seeing with those bright, wondering eyes that peer into my soul, a land whose freedom is to us a mockery, and whose liberty is a lie. I saw the shadow of the veil as it passed over my baby. I saw the cold city towering above the blood-red land. I held my face beside his little cheek, showed him the star children and the twinkling lights as they began to flash, and stilled with an even song the unvoiced terror of my life. End quote. I remember photographing my first son's little dimpled hand. He was asleep in his crib, and his hand was hanging out between the slats of his crib. And I wondered, how big will his hands eventually be? What will he accomplish, and what joys and blessings will he experience in his life? As a father, I had no fear of his withstanding the scourge of society. That doesn't exist for a white boy, and it certainly didn't happen to me. I wept tears of joy and gladness for his presence and his future potential, not tears of sorrow and hopelessness for the struggles he would face just to exist each day of his entire life. Back to the book. So sturdy and masterful he grew, so filled with bubbling life, so tremulous with the unspoken wisdom of a life of but 18 months, distant from the all-life. We were not far from worshiping this revelation of the divine, my wife and I. Her life builded and molded itself upon the child. He tinged her every dream and idolized her every effort. And so we dreamed and loved and planned by fall and winter, and the full flush of the long southern spring, till the hot winds rolled from the fetid Gulf, till the roses shivered and the still stern sun quivered its awful light over the hills of Atlanta. And then one night, the little feet pattered wearily to the wee white bed, and the tiny hands trembled, and a warm, flushed face tossed on the pillow, and we knew the baby was sick. 10 days he lay there, a swift week and 3 endless days, wasting away. Cheerily, mother nursed him the first days and laughed into the little eyes that smiled again. Tenderly then she hovered around him till the smile fled away and fear crouched beside the little bed. Then the day ended not, and the night was a dreamless terror. A joy and sleep slipped away. I hear now that voice at midnight calling me from a dull and dreamless trance, crying, the shadow of death. And we spoke no word and turned away. He died at eventide, when the sun lay like a brooding sorrow. The day changed not. The same green grass glinted in the setting sun. Only in the chamber of death writhed the world's most piteous thing, a childless mother. Blithe was the morning of his burial, with bird and song and sweet-smelling flowers. The trees whispered to the grass, but the children sat with hushed faces. And yet it seemed a ghostly, unreal day, the wraith of life. We seemed to rumble down an unknown street, behind a little white bundle of posies, with the shadow of a song in our ears. The busy street dinned about us. They did not say much, those pale-faced, hurrying men and women. They did not say much. They only glanced and said, "Niggers," end quote. I am grateful that I never lost a child. I know that's not true, however, for some of you. But I trust that the final condolences and services you experienced around that tragedy were given and conducted with love and support, and that your grieving and suffering could take place with a strong degree of dignity in an atmosphere of comfort from a loving community of family and friends. I cannot imagine, with the weight of sorrow bearing down with almost unbearable force, that in the midst of that processing and the reality of the coldness and the sting of death, one has to experience shouts of evil dehumanization from strangers on the street. Back to the book. All that day and all that night there sat an awful gladness in my heart. Nay, blame me not if I see the world thus darkly through the veil. And my soul whispers ever to me, saying, not dead but escaped, not bound but free. No bitter meanness now shall sicken his baby heart, till it die a living death. No taunt shall madden his happy boyhood. Well sped, my boy, before the world had dubbed your ambition insolence, had held your ideals unattainable, and taught you to cringe and bow. Better far this nameless void that stops my life than a sea of sorrow for you. If one must have gone, why not I? Why may I not rest me from the restlessness and sleep from this wide awakening? Was not the world's alembic time in his young hands, and is not my time waning? Are there so many workers in the vineyard that the fair promise of this little boy could lightly be tossed away? The wretched of my race that lie in the alleys of the nation sit fatherless and motherless and unmothered, but love sat beside his cradle and in his ear. Wisdom waited to speak. Perhaps now he knows the all-love and needs not be to be wise. Sleep then, child. Sleep till I sleep, and awaken to a baby voice and the ceaseless patter of a little feet above the veil. End quote. What a sad, sad, sad reality in the loss of a child. I cannot imagine having to even think of and evaluate death in a context that one is better off dead than alive, or that I would trade lives with a lost child and rather bear the sorrow of his death than for he to live and endure the pain of living from day to day just because he happened to be born with brown skin. How does the shadow of the veil cover us privileged white folks? Why cannot we, as a society, culture, nation, or species, communicate with and coexist in a fair, mutually inclusive, loving, supporting environment? That's the brokenness I referred to in the chalice light. Du Bois ends his book with these lines from the last chapter, The Souls of White Folk. quote, back beyond the world and swept by those wild white faces of the awful dead, why will this soul of white folk, this modern Prometheus, hang bound by his own binding, tethered by a fable of the past? I hear his mighty cry reverberating through the world, I am white. Well and good, O Prometheus, divine thief. Is not the world wide enough for two colors? For many little shinings of the sun? Why then devour your own vitals if I answer even as proudly, I am black? End quote. So, white brothers and sisters, lest we become complacent with our own shadows and veils of various origins, however, understanding that those are real to us, I believe there is nothing in this life more unfair and unjust than the shadow of the veil. It is my fervent prayer that we all have the courage and capability to help wipe this veil from the face of the earth. Amen. We're ready for our last hymn. Marva's going to play this through it all the way once as an introduction, and then we'll sing it again. Very slow and deliberate and with a lot of meaning. If there's a comma, we're definitely going to take a break, and we'll probably take a break where there isn't a comma. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. want to send us home with these very upbeat and encouraging words from the pen of Pierre Pravavend in his book, The Gentle Art of Blessing. Hear these words as our benediction. Inside you exists a space of infinite beauty and rest, of total unconditional love, of goodness without bounds, of unshakable peace and calm, of dancing joy and playful being, of limitless vision and infinite abundance. Blessed be, go in peace. And Marva, you will be playing a medley, not only from Porgy and Bess. I didn't get the right information to Joan, but she's going to be playing a medley of Negro spirituals, including something from Porgy and Bess. So you're welcome to listen to the entirety of that. It's 10 to 11. We have plenty of time, and listen to her play. Thank you.